Security teams need network data to threat hunt and resolve incidents, but find that PCAP is often too much data and NetFlow isn't enough. Corelight was founded by the creators of Zeek, formerly Bro, and its sensors provide just the right amount of data, transforming raw traffic into comprehensive logs, extracted files, and custom insights so analysts can make fast sense of traffic and move the speed of attack. To find out why Corelight is your best next move in security, visit securityweekly.com/Corelight. Signal Sciences secures the most important web applications, APIs, and microservices of the world's leading companies. Protecting over 7,500 applications and 150 billion production requests per week, Signal Sciences Next-Gen WAF and RASP help companies increase security and maintain site reliability without sacrificing velocity, all at the lowest total cost of ownership. Signal Sciences' patented technology protects any application against any attack, with integrations into any DevOps toolchain. Signal Sciences, demand more from your WAF. Learn more at signalsciences.com/PSW. The greatest threat to businesses today isn't the outsider trying to get in. It's the people you trust, the ones who already have the keys, your employees, contractors, and privileged users. 60% of online attacks are carried out by insiders. To stop these insider threats, you need to see what users are doing before an incident occurs. Observe It enables security teams to detect risky user activity, investigate incidents in minutes, and effectively respond. Get your free trial at observeit.com/securityweekly. Welcome back, everyone, to Enterprise Security Weekly. Some of you have told us that you're overwhelmed by the amount of content that we distribute. In an attempt to make it easier for you to find out what you're interested in, we've created our new listener interest list. You can sign up and select your interest by visiting securityweekly.com/subscribe, clicking the button to join that list. We can't really select your interest just yet, but we've pushed a new release of our internal software today. Much of the focus of that release was supporting a new listener interest list, a new subscriber site that we're working on as well.
Yeah, the new website with the new filtering and sort capabilities. Yeah. So once we get all this recategorization around the interests done, it'll make it easier for you to filter, sort, and find stuff on the site. I added about 50 categories to our internal software today that we've kind of agreed upon is how we're categorizing at a high level all of our content. So it's really exciting. Yeah,
to see that.
We're almost there. We made one big step today, which is cool.
Everyone heard Sweet Caroline today because we play that song every time we make a release, which is nice.
Yes, it's very nice.
Good morale culture thing to build in.
Yes, I just didn't want to hear the song after it when you have to roll back.
Yeah, because Spotify automatically starts playing a playlist based off the song you're playing, and actually it ends up being a pretty good playlist off of Sweet Caroline. So for those, in the car. Anyway, we are here with Luis Giraldo. He is the VP of Product for Kaseya. Luis, welcome to the program.
Thanks so much for the invite, guys.
Luis, thank you for coming on the show. Tell us a little bit about your background.
Oh, long story. We'll try and make it short. Well, I grew up in Colombia. My background is actually as a professional musician. I used to tour professionally with Colombian pop star Shakira, nice. Which is nowadays much more well-known than she used to be back when I moved to Canada. But and I always had this interest in music and computers, and eventually I started looking into computer training for music production software and that kind of thing, and eventually discovered this whole thing around computers and servers, and I found that we're training programs on the Apple side because I was Mac focused. And then started getting into the idea of servers and learning about servers. And that was, like I like to say, I made the transition from pop stardom into IT, a very natural transition, of course.
Of course. Shakira. Oh, sorry.
Exactly, yeah.
That's awesome.
And then once in IT, I actually started my own consulting practice back in 2006, and that's had a few different versions. Got acquired in 2011, went to a larger managed services provider business, left there and started my own managed services provider business that I kept running, and still I'm running sort of on the side with 3 other business partners. And so it's still very much in the thick of dealing with ongoing IT management issues, small business and small, medium enterprise support, and that kind of thing. And so I had built my own documentation platform prior to IT Glue as a need to deal with our own challenge of keeping information standardized across our clients, creating efficiency, making sure everything is documented. And the acquisition of my documentation platform led to my naming to IT Glue's VP of product role. And so now I work with the larger Kaseya organization as well in a strategy role, and here we are.
So IT Glue is now part of this broader Casilla platform, and we did a webcast with Kaseya back in May, I think. And can you give us an overview of kind of the Kaseya platform? I mean, it's got a lot of different components on it, including security components on it. And I think it would help the audience understand, what are all the pieces that Kaseya has, both from an IT management perspective, but also from a security perspective, because our webcast was very focused on some of the security aspects embedded into your IT management platform.
Absolutely, yeah. I think one of the key things to understand is the difference that there is between the types of IT roles that are present in SMB or small enterprise, or even in the managed services provider area. And so we have the situation we like to think of them as single function IT people or multifunction IT people. What's most common in the managed service provider business and or even small SMBs or small enterprise is the multifunction IT person. And so this is where Kaseya's niche really falls. Building solutions that are addressing the multifunction IT provider requirements that deal with everything from remote management and monitoring, our MEM platform, which is one of Kaseya's core products, the VSA, dealing as well with documentation, which is the IT Glue product. And even small enterprises, we're finding, are creating a lot of efficiency for their teams, which are often stressed for time and capacity to do more with less, essentially. And so what we know is that people that create efficiencies in their processes, that document their standards well, document the way they do their work, be it a simple workstation deployment process or a complex security assessment and a remediation issue, are going to be able to do more of those things with more efficiency. And so that's the IT documentation or knowledge management platform. And then you've also got the ticket management or service desk management. And there's Vorex on the enterprise side or SMB side, and there's a business management system, BMS, which incorporates also invoicing and quoting and CRM functionality for the smaller MSPs that also need to do some of that work. Those are the three core products of unified IT, but there's also products like Auth Anvil, which does identity provider type service for single sign-on, has multi-factor authentication, which you can deploy on premises for even IT providers that want to manage multi-factor authentication for the customers. They can use a product like Auth Anvil to actually have control, multi-tenant control of that multi-factor authentication functionality for the customers as well. And then there's also the reporting and the assessment side. We have Rapid Fire Tools is also a Kaseya company, which does fantastic security assessments that are either for, you can do PCI compliance assessments, you can do GDPR assessments, you can do network scanning with CyberHawk to understand where there's risks or things that are changing that are unexpected in the network. So a whole suite of products, obviously, that are addressing that multifunction IT requirement.
Got it. And when you think about that, I mean, we focus a lot more on the security aspects in the webcast. We were talking on the previous segment about identity and access management, right? It's one of those big topics where, managing identity, multi-factor authentication, streamlining that, making it easier, addressing things like privileged access, for example. Give me a kind of an overview there on the Auth Anvil product from a identity access, maybe privileged access component, because that's one of those big core areas for me that is really hard for organizations to get right. It's usually complex. How does Kaseya actually help simplify aspects of that?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'll give you, since you guys were talking about passwordless access specifically, I'll give you an example of that because I feel that that's actually one of the interesting challenges to efficiency or convenience. And when, as you know, when people are faced with challenges around convenience, they'll create security gaps, they'll create security problems. And so Kaseya has this in the VSA product, the The RMM, which is the remote monitoring and management, has a great feature called one-click access. Now, one-click access, because there's a root agent on the device, allows an agent that needs to do some kind of work on that workstation to one-click access that machine, where the agent is actually creating the privileged account on the device, allows them to sign in with that privileged account, and no longer requires having a password that is known to the agent or stored somewhere, creating, again, another surface attack to log into that machine to do their work. Now, obviously, the role and capability of that agent to do that is managed within VSA through scoping, and so a manager can say, yes, these set of technicians can do that function and can access machines with one-click access, or cannot. But this, again, removes one of those challenges of having to store that password or that admin credential for that device. And so there's a lot of work that Kaseya is doing around making things more secure, yet a little bit more simpler. Now, on the AuthAnvil side, AuthAnvil is a true identity provider in that sense. You can create a directory, manage a directory. You can synchronize it with Active Directory if you have an existing directory on site. And it's a great way to deploy a single sign-on functionality into your environment. Now, single sign-on, what I mean by that is apps that support things like SAML 2.0 can be enrolled to be federated with this AuthAnvil system, so that when technicians or people or end users are logging into their web services or apps, they're going to be essentially redirected to AuthAnvil to do their sign-in. AuthAnvil, obviously a single source of credentials for that kind of thing. We see, obviously, more single sign-on the enterprise side. There seems to be a need to simplify the sign-in process for end users. But it's interesting that we see a lot of managed services providers struggling with this a little bit, because it is complex to deploy for smaller organizations. It creates additional cost. It creates additional difficulty and just rollout challenges, because even for lesser capacity or tier 1 technicians to support and understand single sign-on, it can be difficult in the beginning. So AuthAnvil tries to simplify that process. Again, it's a multi-tenant environment that is easy for managed services providers to do across multiple clients. And again, simplifies the process of sign-on for those end users, creating less of a attack surface for breaches.
That's good. Yeah, I mean, it is a challenge, I think. And when you're dealing with an organization where the IT manager is also the security guy and has to manage all the infrastructure and all the remote access, and, oh, by the way, has to deal with identity and access protection, simplifying that for these organizations is going to be key.
Yeah, I mean, how many? I know countless IT providers that their point of contact to other customers is the CFO, and so there's definitely a big disconnect between the customer's interests around security and the managed service provider in that case, because there is no there's maybe a cookie cutter approach trying to deliver most IT services in that scenario, and if that managed service provider is not doing single sign-on as a premise of their service, then they're just simply not going to do that for those customers, even though the customers might need it or might be obviously benefited from having that extra layer of security.
Right. Let's talk about some of the endpoint and management capabilities, because again, you've got this agent, this root-based agent on the box. And so my guess is you've expanded the capabilities of that agent to do other things. What are some of those other things from a security perspective that are embedded in that VSA kind of endpoint component of the platform?
Sure. Well, from a security perspective, the agent itself can deploy a PowerShell script, or can deploy an action that does or locks down the machine or changes a password or does any number of these things. So from that perspective, obviously the needs are going to dictate the requirements or the action that needs to take place. But generally speaking, RMM platforms, including VSA, have typically been about command and control, obviously understanding reporting of the device. In many cases, RMM platforms are deployed obviously not only across end user endpoints, but also servers, things that need disk space monitored or CPU monitored, and things that are not necessarily security related. And so there's obviously a lot of breadth in the scope that an RMM type of platform is covering. But on the security side, definitely when there's I think a key piece of the work that is security related that is done by your antivirus or EDR solution, and then another key piece that is done by the RMM agent. And many times these two things work together. RMM tools like VSA integrate with AV providers, so you can report on the status of AV within VSA and that kind of thing. So from that point, the security is really a little bit of a team effort.
Got it. And then I think you also have some patching capabilities. Again, I assume that's part of the RMM agent that now has the ability to apply patches when missing patches are there, as well as some of the other things you just described.
Of course, VSA functions on this core concept of procedures. And so procedures can evaluate the state of a machine based on the current state of software updates. Again, if a specific update is missing or a specific application needs to be a certain version, it can deploy a procedure to update that application, install that patch. It could even roll back a patch if necessary or if there's an issue. So that ties in obviously into security patching and management is a key component of that. And this is one of the primary things that people buy an RMM platform for, is to manage this RMM patching at scale, because it's just a lot of work to do manually or individually, of course.
Yes, of course. As I just went through today when I had to update my Mac and let it sit there for 45 minutes and do whatever it did.
10.14.6, I take it.
Yeah, I assume so. I get the little notification and I click the button, and the next thing I know, I lose my MacBook Air for 45 minutes.
Release update day today. We released our internal software. The IDE we use for development, PyCharm from JetBrains, had a huge update, and I mentioned them because I really do like their software. I think it's awesome. Apple had an update today, so we'll see what else is being updated today. Yeah,
on that note, actually, it's interesting that so many people deploy patches as soon as they're available, and this itself introduces potentially an attack surface, because we've known that sometimes zero-day issues come with patch day. And so one of the things that VSA can do is manage the software update process on the device. So when an end user goes to a software update, they may not see the ability to update their machine because it is being managed by VSA in the background. So that gives IT teams or a managed service provider a little bit more control of when those patches are being deployed. In many cases, larger teams are actually testing and verifying that those patches are going to work, and then obviously rolling them out to a group of pilot users in some cases if they're being really diligent, and then the larger organization as a whole.
See, I agree with that strategy now, and I didn't always agree with that strategy because I worked for a university. I started in 2001. It was one of the security folks, one of the few security folks there through 2003 and 2004. And if you remember, in that time frame, the worms that were coming out just like devastating networks. I maintained the opinion that we should apply patches specifically to Microsoft operating systems and software that listened on service over the network immediately. And back then, I'll still stand by that mindset because it was too dangerous. I mean, I had to create specific areas for folks to build systems, because if they built systems that were exposed even to the rest of the network, they were owned as soon as they booted up. Today, and even in the past few years, I don't know, you can pick a time frame when the tides kind of shifted, that we're in much better shape. And now I think you should spend more time on your configuration management, on doing the things to your systems that are going to improve their integrity, improve their performance, and as a byproduct, improve their security, more so than we got to apply every patch as soon as it comes out. To speak to your point, Louise, it has to be managed, and I think now we have more of a luxury to manage it, as opposed to there's a new Microsoft patch. If you don't apply it immediately, you're getting owned, like today, like now.
Yeah, and even when you do have to immediately deploy, I think this is one of the powers of RMM and VSA in particular, is that you can do that if you need to.
Right. Yeah, and there are vulnerabilities, Louise, to your point, like RDP and the WannaCry vulnerability that, you know what, in those circumstances, we want to go back to 2003 perhaps and go, let's push that patch out like now, right?
Yeah, I mean, people create their own problems in that sense. I still see situations where a small organization has 3 or 4 people that work from home, and rather than deploying remote desktop server gateway, for instance, where it's properly secured by SSL and all this stuff, they just open a few ports for them to just hit RDP directly. And so no wonder people are getting owned. And so it's great that things like the NIST cybersecurity framework have come out, because they're even starting to dictate recommendations around things like, hey, if you have a server, this server should actually have multi-factor authentication for the local admin accounts. And we really haven't had a sort of an official body making this kind of recommendation previously. It's kind of been, best practice. This is the law of the land. But when people want to verify against some kind of government policy or anything like that, there really hadn't been anything like that.
Right. We talked a little bit about malware a second, and one of the things that's interesting embedded into the Kaseya platform is the whole backup and disaster recovery side of the house. And I think it's something people overlook from a cyber resiliency standpoint, in that if I am under a ransomware attack and my data gets locked up and it potentially goes bye-bye because I either don't pay the ransom or I pay the ransom and I don't get my data back, backup and recovery is a big component from a cyber resiliency standpoint that I don't think we put enough attention to. And Kaseya actually has some capabilities to help with that issue as well, right?
Absolutely. And so what I'll say about that to start is that I think people aren't even having the right conversations to begin with. In the managed service provider world, when you go to a customer and say, well, you have to have backup, the customer may or may not agree to that because they're given a choice of doing it or not doing it, but they're not given the information to understand how to make a business decision around it. And so one of the things that I've been doing for many years is have a conversation with customers about, hey, this is the risk that is in your environment if you do nothing. This is the risk if you do sort of a topical file-based backup. And this is the risk that we can eliminate if you deploy a fully virtualized backup solution that can get you back up and running within 15 to 30 minutes kind of thing. And so when you ask a customer, it's like, well, how long is your business comfortable being down from an outage? Most people will respond with very unrealistic expectations. So, a few minutes, 5 minutes, 10 minutes. And so now it opens the door to have this conversation about how realistic their approach to cybersecurity and backup and disaster recovery is. You say, okay, well, to get you back in 5 to 10 minutes, we need to have a fully virtualized appliance that's doing all your snapshots and can actually spin up its own environment in that machine if, let's say, you get hit by ransomware, and be able to keep you running and recover to operations so that you can continue operating. And so that's going to cost X. Now, if you are comfortable, however, with 10 days of downtime and losing potentially 10 days of data, then here's the cost of that. And so I think the understanding is a key piece, and this happens even in enterprise where there's like, oh, we need backup, but there's not really a conversation about what are the requirements of the organization in terms of that return, that RTO and RPO, or return to operation and recovery point objective. So I think. With the platforms that Kaseya has, like Unitrends and Unitrends MSP. Unitrends MSP is for managed service providers. It provides sort of a multi-tenant console to manage backups across all your customers. There's direct-to-cloud backup that you can just deploy for file-based backup. There's also image-based appliances that can do an entire image of a server to deploy in its own hardware, virtualized if that server physically went down, had an issue, or if malware really required that you go back to an entire snapshot from 2 hours ago, for example. So Unitrends has been around a long time. It's a very mature platform. It's a very powerful backup and cybersecurity sort of platform for organizations to consider.
Yeah, I think you bring up a really interesting point is we've forgotten about the business impact assessment and understanding how long can you be without certain systems and the criticality of those systems, and really understanding that, look, if this server goes down or gets hit with a ransomware attack, for example, right? How quickly do I need that back before the business has major impact to itself, right? Back when I was doing GRC, I mean, we always started with the business impact assessment so that we understood the criticality and some of these recovery windows, because how could I put appropriate policies and controls in place to help get the environment back up and running in a suitable time frame? And I think we've forgotten about some of those basic components in how we approach our security programs.
And you guys were actually talking about this not very long ago in a previous webcast. Paul was actually quite passionate about know what you have and classifying your data and understanding what are the different criticality and sensitivity levels. And this may dictate a sort of layered approach to even doing your backups. Some systems may only require some basic file-based backup. Others might require full imaging every X amount of minutes or hours in order to recover from a serious outage or a serious breach.
Exactly. Now, does the rapid fire tool set then help with some of that? So obviously with an agent, you got hardware inventory, you got software inventory. Where does that roll up in the Kaseya platform for some of these types of criticality identification? Is that in the rapid fire tool set from a security compliance overview? Is it in the core VSA product? I'm curious where those pieces come together.
Yeah, that's a great question. VSA can obviously be made to report on certain things because VSA, you can give it a script to run and collect certain information, put it into a field if you need to know about specific things that VSA may not do out of the box. But there's a rich community around VSA of people that are sharing amazing types of scripts and or procedures that collect almost all needs of things that people need to do. Rapid fire tools plays a critical role in understanding where there's security weaknesses. For example, it can tell you if Active Directory does not have a password policy or a weak password policy, or it has users that have not signed in a long time, or users that have not changed their password. This kind of thing, or users that are doing certain actions. For example, CyberHawk can detect an anomaly of an action of a user that signed in at 2 a.m. but is not expected to be working at 2 a.m. This type of thing, rapid fire tools plays an interesting role. The assessment piece of rapid fire tools is also interesting because their products like Reporter can actually push a lot of this data directly into platforms like IT Glue to simplify the documentation process. And you guys very well know how painful this process can be for some IT people. The documentation piece is often neglected. Even internal IT projects that happen, the person that deployed the projects that ends up being the only person that knows anything about it. It's never documented. Nobody knows, what are the testing process for it, what's the backup recovery process for it. And so some of these things are not being documented at all. Network Detective helps discover things on the network, discovers devices and roles and applications, and helps push all this data into IT Glue automatically to sort of alleviate a lot of the challenge with getting stuff documented in the first place.
Documentation sound like a challenge?
Oh, it always, we
were just talking about it earlier today.
Since like the first program I ever wrote, right? And then you go back to it like not even a week later and you're like, how does that work, right? That's when I was like started writing code many moons ago.
And so speaking of code, there's I was reading an article the other day about on Medium about a developer that's like code should not require commenting, and I thought that was interesting because the whole premise was, well, if the code is written well enough, then it doesn't require commenting because any developer worth their salt should be able to figure out what's going on.
But you have to qualify well enough, and I agree with that statement.
Course, yeah.
However, many developers don't understand what well enough means, right? And I think primarily it's two things. Your variable names and function names have to be descriptive, and your logging statements can also serve as your comments, right? So in that sense, I've actually commented a lot less in code, and if you name your functions and variables correctly and your logging statement says what happens in a success versus failure condition, you're pretty good. Anyone else can look at that code and understand what it does.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
We're going to find out with the new release.
We'll see. We'll see.
To wrap that idea up, I think the idea behind rapid fire tools is it's a product that in the stack allows you to know what you don't know. And I think that's one of the biggest challenges with IT is that people get owned when they didn't know that they had a problem or a situation. And so rapid fire tools helps really reduce that attack surface.
And it's not just IT, Luis. It's security in general, right? We can't protect what we don't know. And how do we identify where some of those issues are so we can fix them so that we are not breached or have a security incident?
Yep.
Yeah. Also, rolling back and forth with software, whether you're deploying it to a workstation or whatever it is you talk about app, user, and data, right? There's the app itself. There's the data that it's working with. But then the third component is the configuration. And those are like three separate things. Like Most in a lot of like DevOps environments, I mean, the application and even the applications and operating systems and platforms it runs on is immutable, right? That doesn't matter. What matters is the configuration that you're storing and the data that it's accessing. And those two things need to be backed up. That really gives you, once you separate those three things, that gives you like amazing flexibility to say, I need to update my app. And if it fails, it's cool because I got backups of my configuration. The same thing, if I need to change the configuration to be more secure, I can always roll back, right?
Yeah.
Now, the challenge with what you're saying, and I think you're 100% correct, is that in most IT environments, you have sort of a shifting presence of people where, an experienced person maybe moves on to another role or leaves the company, and the new people coming on board maybe are not well aware of some of those steps or things that need to be done just for even a baseline security approach to doing their work. And so this is where the documentation thing is so key, because somebody joins the organization, they may not even know that this application should be tested on a weekly basis, or that somebody should potentially log into the server to see if its capacity is doing well. Obviously RMM can report on some of these things, but there's opportunities for things to get missed when the documentation is not a core component of the work that's being done. And I think for security, it's even more important because you need to know what the potential vulnerabilities are. Now, if you look at a situation where, for example, everybody's using either Office 365 or G Suite these days, both of those platforms offer single sign-on capability. And you go and inquire in how many people are actually deploying an identity management, an access platform, or single sign-on, and it's a minuscule percentage of the number of people that are out there using these platforms. And so no wonder passwords are such a challenge. No wonder recovery is such a challenge.
Yeah, agreed. That's all the questions I have. I think we've covered the whole Kaseya platform here. Luis, thank you.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks for the chat.
Thanks so much, Luis. With that, we'll take a short break and come back for our final segment. Stay tuned.